All right.
All right, we lit. Yo, what's popping, y'all? Got another great episode, another great legendary episode. As y'all know, I've been making sure I get all the real rights, all the real rights within our Brooklyn dance community. You know what I'm saying? Because order needs to be set, history needs to be told the right way. The pieces need to come together so we could get this perfect narrative of how things trickle down and how things even came to be what they are. So I got, a name that a lot of people respect. At the same time, they do their best to keep it in the shadows. And we're going to make sure we cut through all of that just so everything, again, is in order. So I got Brooklyn Dawn here. What's up, Mike?
Ain't nothing, baby. We up in here.
Okay.
It's starting off 2026 strong. Pause no Diddy. You know what I mean? We're gonna keep it straight, you know what I mean?
Straight like that. All right, so we're gonna start off at the genesis of this thing. So, how was life for you growing up in your household? Mother, father, sisters, and brothers. Like, how was that? How was that dynamic?
Um, very level-headed. Um, very very blessed in that, the aspects if people understand that never had to ask for nothing, you know what I'm saying, blessed, you know what I'm saying, always had that good household influence and always things going around,
Hmm.
everything was flowing. Mom's was a worker, my father was a worker, so everybody had that strong structure as in, keeping it busy, just keeping myself busy, having a good life in my future, things in that aspect.
So you had a strong foundation set for you.
Oh yeah, like yeah, like how you go through those things, like not saying that that you blessed, but it's like, I still had to work for things to know, the aspects of being a man, you know what I'm saying? My mom's ain't cut no corners. Like, my father, he stayed on me, he was very strict. So, so they that's what I mean by level head, you know what I'm saying? So
Okay.
one made sure that, I learned that conditional love as in, my mother and my father as well. But I just also learned that the hard structure of a man was my father, you know what I'm saying? He was always that big influence in my life. Like I I happened to catch on very early. A lot of people won't catch on to that, like as in how your parents move, especially they coming from the South. Both of my parents, my
Mhm.
father, he's deep down from Louisiana. My mom, she's from North Carolina, you know what I'm saying? So they come from a strong background. So they're gonna set the tune for me as well. So especially coming into a big city as in New York. I was born and raised in New York. So as in my parents' background, they were Southern. So
Yeah. So
you know.
so pretty much me listening to you would pretty much say that your parents provided you the balance that you needed to necessarily take on the world,
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. You know what
and
I'm
they
saying?
did.
As in, you gotta earn to, to achieve, to, to have things. Just like, everything is a given as in a slap on the wrist or something to like, all right, my parents spoiled my parents spoiled me, they had they had the funds and they had the things to to spoil me and stuff, which they did, but they showed me along the way as in growing up to being a young man into a man, you know what I'm saying? A lot of kids, a lot of people ain't have that influence, so it's like for that, it just tightened me up a little fast. Like I was already washing my clothes and going to the cleaners and doing things like before 13, so those things is like what they set me up for, a certain way how you carry yourself. Don't sag your jeans. Like, carry yourself presentable. It's a certain way how
Mhm.
you carry yourself to represent, you know, your parents. So a lot of kids ain't understand that, So it's like at first it's like it wasn't hard for me, but just by me looking at other people and their parents wasn't as in too much on them as much as mine. So it's like I was grateful for that. You feel what I'm saying? So it's like
Right.
you see that kid walking in the street with his pants sagging, but it's like they thought that was cool, a trend, something that was cool. But I was like, you know what? Like, I don't want my mother to get on me a certain way. You know what I mean? So it's like, let me carry myself this way. So it's like, all right, clean shirt, button ups, nice khakis, things like that, shiny face, all that, So when you see that, it's a different, people grasp it to you differently. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like, wow, like, you know what I'm saying? And then it makes your parents look good at the same time. So it's like, how you say the same thing, like what you do reflects on your parents is the same way what your parents do reflects on the child.
Right.
So it's like, it's like credit for credit. It's like, when you walking down the street with your mother and her old friend or something, oh my God, you keep him looking nice and all that. So you take that in the brain. You know what I mean? So it's like you keep, those little keys is like, you know what? Like, they, and then in the same time, they like, yeah, and John, he's over there, his moms don't, he don't take care of him like that. He walk around with his pants sagging. So it's like those little things I was catching on, like, nah, I don't want to be that bad example. So it's like it was that, and on top of just carrying myself as I'm growing up,
Okay,
just
so
so
with
young.
one answer, so pretty much based on that dynamic, you would say you was loved.
Oh, unconditionally.
All right, that's dope. All right, so now we go and take it outside. So, tell us about when you stepping outside your house now. Tell us about the area you're raised in. Tell us about the soundtrack that came with the area you're raised in. Tell us about the fashion that came with the area you were raised in, and tell us about the general what's that? The general aesthetic of what it's like living in your area growing up. You gotta come out your house to pass through this every day. What is that like?
Uh, well, if you want to talk as in, if you want to talk in that way, it's like as in me coming up as in a strong, you know, music tune and stuff like that. It was like in the early, it was like I could say, if you want to hear, it was like, or it all depended on the temperature. Like if like when I was really like acknowledging and all that, which like I was brought up in a household where my mom's playing a lot of old school music, you know what I'm saying? Roy C. Everybody say Michael Jackson, like, that was one of the majors, but it wasn't like a major hit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like Al Green and I was on the old joints, like 60s to
Mhm.
70s. My mom's pulling out the records. So it's like cleaning up the crib. Everybody talked that narrative too. So it's like, and everybody, it was so crazy. I think in all African American households, they always, and this is what I was telling you, like, my parents coming from the South. So a lot of people, parents come from the South, so they still have that soul, and you listen to a lot of soul music. And then you also hear funk. But if you really
Oh,
want to get
definitely.
onto it, I don't hear a lot of people talk about house music.
Hmm.
That was I could say like the house music was like a major impact, like as in the early 90s. Besides, like, if you listen to Hot 87 or something like that, you hear West Coast music. Warren G was really crazy on the radio. Easy E and them was crazy on the radio. And they was West Coast rappers. And we on
Facts.
the East
West
Coast.
Coast had the 90s in the headline.
Right. Man, they had that in the jam. But you still heard the Rakims. You still
Mhm.
heard you know what I'm saying, the Big Daddy Kanes and all that. So you still had that, and that was like an 80s era. Like, you know what I mean? You still hear those coming through on Sundays and stuff like that. You might hear DJ Stratch on a joint, Red Alert on a joint. Red Alert had man crazy old, and then you gotta understand, like, they was keeping a lot of the 80s culture alive too when the East Coast was trying to like fade it out on the radio.
Mm.
So if you hear uh Warren G, you might hear Ice Cube, you might hear joints from the West Coast, but we always represent on the East Side, as in our radio stations, as in Hot 97, 98.7. We got the R&B joints going on. So it's like, you got to look bigger out the picture. Like those was like still standing on like, East Side music, like, and then when the house music came in, like I could say, like that's when you get to follow me, do all
Facts.
that going on. So when all that started booming, that I could say that was like 91, 92. Uh um, all those joints.
And what
G
area is this
Boom.
that you necessarily navigating
This
through?
is like this is like 90, this is like 91,
No, not
92.
yet. What's the area? Like where you being raised at?
Oh, I'm at Bedstuy as always. Bedstuy do or die. Very rough, very, very, very rough area. Very, very rough.
Hmm.
PS44 was my public school, which a lot of people, to be honest with you, my elementary school, that should have been, they should have made a documentary on my elementary school. Like
Mm.
PS44 sits in the heart of Bed-Stuy. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people know about this, about that elementary school, and a lot of talent came out that school as well.
No.
A lot of people from the dance community as well, as we gonna go on with it. But just like a lot of talent came out of there. Like, PS44, that was one of the that's what like I really got my feet really wet. You know what I'm saying? Paul's no Diddy. You know what I'm saying? That's where I really got my feet wet as in I had other talent going on at that time. So it's like so when you were saying with the music, you gotta understand like what I was saying, like you had the funk kicking in, which it was always booming, but the house music was really pushing up. And then
Yeah,
the
house started
Jamaican,
kicking up, boy.
yeah, yeah, it was kicking up. But then at the same time, you had the Jamaican regular, culture music. That was a major thing too, as well. You heard culture, like, but you hear those like mainly like, if you go on certain blocks or something like that, it's still in the style. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? But it's like certain blocks and stuff like that. Troop Avenue was a major, like what I was saying, Troop Avenue was a major sound scan as in Jamaican music and stuff like that. But as in, like I said, in the 90s or whatever the case may be, like 90, 91 and all that, you just heard more like the 80s going into like 87, 80, 80, 89, 88, stuff like that. The Rakims, the Big Daddy Kings, and you know what I'm saying, the Roxannes and all that. That's back in 85. So you gotta understand that's like if you think about 90, 91, that's nothing but a six year grace period. So it's
right.
like that you see how the music transitioned from that to they start to pushing with the NWAs and all that going on. But at the same time, like I said, Red Alert, he also was pushing out a lot of the early structure as in keeping, the rap and all that going on as in hip hop.
Yeah.
So that was a major pickup as in the early 90s.
What was the fashion like? You're a young man necessarily seeing what's going on outside of your particular style, just as a young man. Like what are the other like adults that you're seeing or the other young kids outside of you? Like what is the fashion like at this time before you would necessarily find yourself wanting to get fresh?
The avias,
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like the avias, I could say Jabos, damage, use. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm talking that. Like, when you see a kid come out with a whole used outfit or a damaged outfit, it's like, nah, his mom's in selling drugs. Or like like people like that was it. But if you look at the heavy D's, you look at the TLCs, they wearing it, cross colors, all that.
Right.
So it's like advertisement you was seeing off TV, but at that time I was looking at Word Up magazines and stuff like that. So a lot of if you look at the Word Up magazines, what's the other magazines they used to have? They used to have the flavor, the What's Up magazine. It was a couple other joints. The vibes and all that too. That was jumping. But at that time, like when you see that, that's when you mostly catch the fashion. You
Mm.
know, you might catch Bobby Brown in a crazy used outfit. You might see Tupac in a Jabot's fit with, that's when they used to have the sock hat. I mean, excuse me, the baby hats.
Mm.
um Naughty by Nature, that was a big influence as in us because that was a major thing for us too. So Naughty by Nature is like 93, 94. Like you didn't with OPP, yeah, all that
So
going on at the
me
time. So
back.
everybody wanted to be them at the time. Chris Cross, when they used to wear the jeans backwards.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like we used to have the jumpers we wear them backwards and all that for Easter with the feline, with the grain hills or something on. You know what I mean? Like also a major fit was sweatsuits was a major thing too. For Easter, everybody loves sweatsuits. I don't know why, but that the one that used to make the plastic joint back in the days.
Oh, the I know exactly what you're talking about, but it's
Yeah,
um
you had to. It had to have that sound to it.
the
You know
swishy,
what I mean?
the
The
swishy.
Swifty sound. Yeah, it had to have that. Like you know what I mean? You wear your little church clothes and then it's like you meet up with your friends. That's when they used to have 40 Deuce. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? So 40. It was either 42nd Street or Coney Island. So those are two major spots that was lit. Like at first you used to go with your parents. Then your parents let you lead off to be who you are. You know what I'm saying? As in you know. being a young adult, but you still had that little adult. So for example, we running around, we like 9, 10 years old. They used to consider adult like 17, 18 or something like that. Somebody a little bit responsible, but had a lot of fun into them. So it's like, it just, everything was just fast as in, fashion and all that. I ain't gonna front like I could say from 90 to 95, it felt like it went too fast. Like,
Mm,
even if just off the trends and the movies, like I said, at that time you had Juice going on. That was a major impact. Boys in the Hoods was a major impact. Movie wise was like, that was really like a thing that, draw what's going on in your own neighborhood. So it's like,
yeah.
um, yeah, so a lot of stuff like that.
Okay.
Even with elementary with PS44, like PS44, what I was explaining from earlier is like it's very talented. Like, I was a singer at first, like, in PS44. So that's where I got a lot of my branch off, shine, stand out, stuff like that. So that's where my talent started in it. And like I
Taking
said,
notes.
oh yeah. Mr. Gaffney, shout out to him. Like, a lot of people know Mr. Gaffney used to stay across the street from PS44. So
Mm.
he used to keep me after school and he used to like have me do like singing lessons and stuff like that. And, he just put a real, like, the funny thing he told me about, and then I also used to dance a little bit. Like, I used to be a little comedian. I always, if people know me for that, I was always a comedian, but I always had like a little funny style with me being a comedian. Like I
Right.
was a marking bird. Like I'll mark you. Like, anything to make, me stand out, I was using it. So it's like my singing versus that. So he just told me like, he just gave me this sign, like, one thing about you, like, you always have this drive that you just stand out and you do what you do. So what I mean by that is like he said, like, if you could sing, you could dance. If you could dance, you could do anything that you could put your abilities to. So
Right.
from there, that really pushed me on from there. So, but 44 was a major impact as in who I am, as in my talent, just having that confidence. I didn't been around like I didn't had a 2,000 thousand people audience as in a young kid. And for that age, like, being young, that's a lot of people, 2,000 people, just singing, So that's why I use a lot of my confidence, a lot of my, my image. And I just, like I said, I was just a daredevil.
Mhm.
I just had that drive. And
That's dope. All right.
yeah,
So, where did you find dancing and where did dancing find you?
man, now dancing, now I ain't even go front, like, like I said, like with the dancing wise and stuff like that. I my brother was a dancer actually. Like I used to see my brother be in the crib. He used to be inspired through like I said, Bobby Brown. MC Hammer was crazy.
Oh, whole facts.
Yeah, Kid and Play. So my brother, like, what I'm saying, like he was kind of like, he was a big influence as me as a top dog dancer, as because even though when I used to come down south, because he used to stay down south.
Okay.
So it's like when I used to come back and forth from New York, coming down there to visit him before he moved to New York, like he just had he had the country girls, he had the little spots they had down here, like people really recognized him, and it was just a dope acknowledgement of how people grasped it to him. I was like, yo, and then it's like the things he was seeing. I'm watching this on VH1. Like I said, that's before people even had cable. So it's like Channel 13 was it. Was it Channel 13? I think it was. But
Yeah,
like I
13
said,
was like in New York. That was like PBS and all that.
yeah, you gotta. Yeah, I'm watching this on the floor model, so it's like a lot of his dance moves I was seeing, like MC Hammer and all of them doing. Salt and Pepper, like they had the 5411s, right? 50,
Hmm.
whatever, what I'm saying. They had those joints on, so Queen Latifah, they had their little steps. So even if you notice, even in the early, like I noticed like with the songs, they always had like they dance moves and dance steps. Even though, they say Soul Train and all that, they had that. But if you look at it really was a major thing in 90, 91, 92 that you had to have a dance group that had that dance style and you had to have those moves. So it's like by me seeing that on TV and then I'm seeing my brother doing it from off him looking on, watching it being inspired on TV, that was just a thrill for me. It's like, oh, stupid. Like he really know how to get crazy off the, off that. And the acknowledgement was crazy. So it's like, I like the Kid and Play was a crazy major thing that was crazy for me.
So
You know.
early steps of hip hop in regards to choreography or actual like social move that they created for anybody to do. That was a thing that inspired you early.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's dope.
Definitely.
All right, so every dancer goes through an emulation phase before they will find their identity, like their blueprint in regards to who they are, and everybody know it. So, who and what were you emulating? And that's just outside of your brother.
Uh well, at that time, um, I happened to run across I was going at that time, this elementary, I was just moving around, just going to it started from house parties. Like I started going to, a couple of my friends, a couple females or males, they have house parties. So it was these two people that really was like on the radar, as in they was just bringing in this trend on beside of the reggae, tuning up. It's like, okay, you might hear it on the radio here and there. Reggae didn't get its shine until later on radio, like airways. So
Mm,
you might have to hear it out of somebody's car, or you might have to hear like a DJ or something like that. So my thing was that I happened to be at a party, and I happened to, it was this dude named Bezo and Gorton. So, we in a party, we chilling or whatever the case may be. We just regular alley because back in the days, like I said, we was talking about, it was all about hip hop dances and groups and stuff like that.
right.
So the lady was like, "Yeah, we have a special appearance, and these guys, they know how to dance and blah blah blah." So like, okay, like whatever, like So they were saying reggae music. So at that time, that's when you had a lot of like, it wasn't a real hype. It was just like you whining, and you see people whining on each other. So what's so crazy, even at that time when you was young kids, you couldn't whine on, we adolescents, we little babies. So it's like you
Mhm.
can't really whine on nothing. So it's like you just staring, looking, and cake, ice cream, yeah. But Gordon and Bezo, it was these two guys from my neighborhood, Gordon and Bezo, whatever. You know, within Troop Avenue, Tompkins, Bedford, it's from a 5 to 7, 8 block radius. So it's like everybody know each other. So it's
Mhm.
like when they made the special appearance, they was like, yeah, we have these two guys, they're gonna dance on reggae, blah blah blah, blah. So like I said, it was a new hype. So it's like you ain't get that shine like to really cut the music off and just have these people perform. So when I happened to see Bezo and Brian, like, Bezo and Gorton, they, when they, like, it was the way how the introduction of how the way they came in and the influence people already, like, as an adults. Because what's so crazy, a lot of adults, they can do all that, like, all
Right.
that other things. And they more in tune of the reggae music. So when they came in, when they did their little performance, I just happened to see, like, it was like, oh, like, it's like, I like the way, such and such move. It was just like a certain way how they was moving. And like at that time they had the skital, they had the bogle, they had all that going on. So it was like it was a certain way how they, and then it's like they had kind of like that like a little routine. So
Mm.
it's like I forgot the lady, like later on I found out, but not for nothing. Like I said, when I saw them, it was like, oh, okay, like, and how the way the kids looked at it, I looked at it, it was like, yo, that's kind of dope. And it was like the music I like. I used to like bass, like something about it. It's like, so certain things that he was doing, it was like it was also the certain tunes and the way I was grasping to the energy of what they was bringing to me. Like, okay, these guys, like, I like the way they bringing it.
Mhm.
They it's something new to the table. And on top of that, that's something that my mom's like. You know what I mean? Because my mom's, she kind of like the Jamaican music.
Okay.
So yeah.
So what would be when was the breakout moment where in the midst of you practicing all your dancing and whatever to find your identity, what would be the breakout moment that you would step out, whether it be a performance or a battle, um, that you would sit here and say, yo, I could really do this and I'm gonna push this.
But to be honest with you, like I said, my influence was like Gorton, man. Like, me and him wasn't tight like that. Like, when I saw him dance, him and Bezo, I wasn't, I was around them. There was guys that I saw in the neighborhood. So it's like, through time, that's what, I start to get around that type of environment to make me jump off the porch. So saying basically like, what made me like really start to get in tune with that was like basically I got around Gorton. I got around him and like I said, listen, man, me and him cut Yogi Bear. My environment, like as in what you was explaining earlier about Bedstuy, it was more. It's more than what it is. Like Yogi Bear was a big thing for the people. They know what Yogi Bear is,
Hmm.
and it's like blocks. Different blocks. They go to this big church and stuff like that. We have our little prayers. They had games. They had a lot of things good for the kids. So like I said, I just happened to through time, like my brother he had a barber shop. So Gorton is from Halsey Street. My son Bezo, he was from Decatur and Tompkins. Gorton is from Halsey and Tompkins. So I'm from Putnam and True. So, as you can see, like, that's still like a 4 to 5 to 6, 8 block radius. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna know people because our zone schools is like I said, 44, 258, 305. That's all Marcy area. So it's like you're gonna run across these people.
Hmm.
So basically, like, like I said, like when I saw Bezo, and then what I was explaining to you is Bezo, his father, he had a Jamaican restaurant on
Hmm.
Troop between Hancock and Jefferson. So I stayed on Putnam and Troop. So that's nothing but a block radius. So I gotta always walk through that block. So my favorite Chinese restaurant, for example, I used to always go to the Chinese restaurant that sits on Hancock between Halsey and Hancock and Troop. So I
Hmm.
gotta pass his father restaurant at that time. And then like, that was like Little Haiti. Like that block, I could say from Hancock to Troop, that little short block, you got Bajans, Jamaicans, you got, Caribbean. That's all you have out there. Like, you smell the jerk chicken, you smell all that. So before they say over there, I've been smelling in the 90s. You walk it past, but at the same time, those are things we was eating. So as a young you wouldn't know what that is until you get
Right.
older. So you just smell it, just smelled it good. So one day I happened to be walking past, and like I said, Bezo, the dude that I saw dancing, you know what I'm saying, in the record shop. I mean, at the party, it wasn't only that. Like they was very known. Like they had this spot called Vanguard on Fulton Street. So they was doing a lot of dances there. Then they was also dancing on Halsey. Halsey Street was a legendary block too. Halsey, I could say from Halsey, Marcus Garvey down to Tompkins, it's like they like family. So it's
Hmm.
like if you beefing with this Halsey, you beefing with that Halsey. So it's like they had a lot of like culture going on. As in, like I said, when the Jamaican music and stuff like that was picking up, they had like dance girls and they had the guys and stuff. So Gort was one of the top dogs over there. So like I said, as I started to move around, I was one of the kids that jumped off the porch early. Like how back in the days, your moms were like, don't go past that corner. Da, da, da. I didn't left. My mom's yeah, I was the type my mom's didn't try to put like two, 3 reports saying I was missing. I was one of them kids. I go like so that's what made me branch out to like reach out and see other people. So make a long story short, Gorton, like I said, when I started to hang on Halsey Street, my brother had a barbershop. So Gorton was the dude that, like I said, I already used to see him around dancing,
Yeah.
but they had their little click on Halsey. Like they ain't like Halsey, back in the days, like, and that's what I love about Best on that era. You couldn't just come on Halsey Street and just be rolling with those guys like that. They had crews, clicks, and all that then. So I kind of like gradually started hanging with them dudes over there. So that's when I started to go to 258 Park. So I'm starting to know that area over there. Plus, on top of Tompkins, because Tompkins had a game room.
Hmm.
So all the kids come from Tompkins, like I say, from McDonough, Decatur. They used to come down to the game room. So it's like community thing. I'm right there putting them in troops. So all I gotta do is come a block down. I'm right there on putting them in Tompkins, the game room. So make a long story short, go in or whatever the case may be. He used to sweep for my brother. Like basically, my brother used to cut hair. He used to own a shop, and him and my brother used to have a very tight, relationship. And it's crazy because I used to see him in the neighborhood dancing and stuff like that. So it's like, and he was very known in 258 area and stuff like that. So me and him kind of got tight, and I started to, get under him a little bit, so
Mm,
I already knew him for being a dancer. So it's like, at that time in the beginning, it wasn't really based on my thoughts of that, but it's like by me seeing, like, by me rolling with him and the energy and the people that grasped into him and loved how the way, he was ahead of his time. Because like I said, this is like I said, this is like 94,
mm,
you know, this is 94, you know, he was already, like I said, he was already dancing already, and I met him in 94. You feel what I'm saying? So it's like he already had a little platform already, as in, people know him for that. You know what I'm saying? When I started to roll with him. So he was my biggest inspired, you know. I was inspired through him. Like, he was my big pickup. He was the one that really, pushed me to really jump out to what I am. You feel me?
so
So
you pretty much ran with Gordon to necessarily get your feet wet with the dancing situation. In
yeah,
regards,
people ask me, they're like, yo, you with him? And they like, yo, you with him every day. Like it went from, like I said, it went from my brother barber shop, and we building a relationship, you know what I'm saying? And then we actually did a block party. We did a dance group, me, Fat Boy, you know what I'm saying, his cousin Ross. Um, it was like 4 or 5 of us in a dance group. So that's when I actually first, was dancing with Gordon. You feel what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
as in the group. I was chubby. Shout out to me. I was chubby at that time. Fat. You know what I'm saying? I keep it a buck. So at that time, yeah, I was chubby. So at that time, I still didn't really grasp into it like that until he did this one. When he danced at this one block party, it was like on Halsey, actually, when he danced on Halsey and Tompkins. He danced that Halsey and Tompkins, and it just like, and my son Javon, Flip. That's when they used to have the set called Silver Cat. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm,
at that time, you start to have young youths before, like that was a little older than us. So, for example, if we about when it really started to pick up, you had guys 15, 16, 17 already, like in the mix of wanting to be a DJ. So everybody had they plant like they feet in certain ways. So for example, if Gordon was the dancer and he known for that, the DJs acknowledge the dancer. So it's like he already
right,
had that
right, right.
platform. You feel what I'm saying? So it's like if they see him, they like da 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 da, real rosters, real dreads. You feel what I'm saying? So and then I'm rolling with him. Me and him started to go into Jamaican structure areas. Like they had this major thing called June Balloon. So
Mm,
that was like, yeah, June Balloon was on it was on Kingston between St. Mark's and Brooklyn. The Brooklyn Museum.
okay,
This is
okay.
this is back in now. Me and Gordon, we rolling around together. I could say 90, like I said, like
Hold on, let me
95.
just interject real quick. Um, just in case the live disconnect, I'm gonna just make a new link and we gonna continue. Other than that, like there's a timer on the recording, so I just want to let you know that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah, so it was this thing called June Balloon. So, at that time we little youth, so it's like we don't even belong in it. So it's like basically like at that time, it was a major thing too. Bedstuy was very cultural. That's when big sounds started to come out of Bedstuy between, Bedstuy and Flatbush, as in DJ sets, like,
Mhm.
so that was picking up real, real, real heavy too. So at that time, when they were seeing dealing with the hip hop structure and all that, that's when you start to hear more culture music. So it's like, that start to like make a little branch, like, for people to understand. But like I said, us as little kids, it's like, it's just you hear certain artists, they just rapping. I mean, regular, reggae artists, they just regular chatting and stuff like that. So as you start to go into these functions, you start to have a more understanding. So what I was explaining about June Balloon, they used to throw weed out of the helicopter. Yeah, they used to lock this down. Like I said, they shut this down like in 96, 97, 97, I think. 96, they locked it down. But they had that going on since like 90.
Mm,
I guess they seized the big time drug dealers or whatever they got going on. But they used to have that for Jamaicans, rosters. And, they had big Jamaican sounds. They used to come through there and play the Jamaican culture. And they used to let the people smoke weed. You know what I'm saying? But you can't take the marijuana out the park. They used to have a lockdown, police, all that. You know,